I know you've heard me complaining about not having something to hold parts while I'm trying to solder them, so I came up with this little deal. I got an alligator clip and I soldered a piece of like 12 gauge solid core copper wire to another alligator clip over here, and this allows me to like hold stuff so that I can solder it. So let's go ahead and solder this together. We'll start down here on this end. And these terminal strips take some heat to get them really soldering good. So don't be shy about putting some heat into them. Especially when you're soldering into that lower hole. Okay, we'll let that set. And we want to make sure that that's up against that. I think I am going to, this is some rosin core flux. Put a little flux on this as I'm soldering these up. Then we'll move our little clip when we, I don't need that much. Here we go. And this one might take a little extra heat because it's got the big terminal on the bottom of it. I'm going to go ahead and be generous with the solder on this. And we'll solder this one. And then I'll move this down here, and I think I am going to trim this off just a, wow, that's hot. Trim that off flush with the end of that. And make sure that's down all the way on there. Come back and put a little dab of flux on this. And solder this last one in. Again, don't be shy about putting some good heat in this terminal and flowing a little extra solder on this part. So make sure you've got a really good solid solder connection. And there we go. Now the only thing I see that, ooh, we might have made a little error is how am I going to get this underneath there now? We may have to loosen. I'm going to take off my little clip here. See if that might squeeze under there. There it goes. This can be a little snug, but there we go. And then just nail that down just like that. That turned out really nice. Get our little screw. And this should be the last time we have to take this back out. And try to get that straight across there. And then tighten it down. I want to get that good and tight. And double check this one over here. Yeah, that one was, I forgot to snug that one down. There we go. And we never soldered this one over here. We just poked it through the hole. It's one thing that's good to do when you're working on these things is kind of wiggle the wires and tug on them, because it's real easy to forget to solder a joint, and then when you get done, you're like going, why won't this thing work? Or you get some voltage, and then when you put a load on it, there's no voltage. I've had that happen a couple of times. And actually, before I solder that down, I'm going to trim off the extra hole on this one too. Like that, because we're not going to be using it either. There we go. And now we just need to run this ground is going to need to be connected to this lug down here on the end, and then I also want to run a piece of wire across there. But let's go ahead and cut this off and strip it back. Again, I'm going to pin this as it's stranded wire to make sure we don't have a problem with a stray strand going where we don't want it to. Okay. So we want that going to that terminal there, being down low like that. I'm wondering if we can kind of wrap these up to hold them together, more like that. There we go. Then the last little piece we need to do is come up with a piece of wire to go across here. And because this is ground, I'm not too worried about it being left exposed like that. And I'm hoping I got a piece of some fat copper wire that I can put across there. And here we go. Here's a piece of the Romex we were using for the insulation. And look at that, it's just the perfect length. So again, let me get my, where the hell did that, oh here it is. Let me get my new little alligator clip friend. And hold it just like that. That doesn't need to go quite. And make sure this is going all the way through. Yep. Just like that. And then let's solder that. Go. And then these two can get soldered together. Just like that. And we have a nice, you see, maybe put that one on top of that one. Or on the inside of it. There we go. That right there looks perfect. And we got a lot of overlap here. So when we solder these two together, that there's a lot of surface area there touching. So it makes a really sturdy connection that's not going to go anywhere. We'll heat the copper wire up first, so we get as little heat as possible into the wire for the capacitor. And go like that. And there we go. So we got our center taps connected to our star ground point. We got a ground bus going across here. So now when we put this cap in, put the negative on this side, that'll ground this end of this cap on the bus. So if we bring this wire and put it in the bottom hole of this pin, then this top part is open to be our B plus to go over to the various places the B plus needs to go. And then put a little jumper across the bottom of this. And maybe do the same little technique we used here. Strip off some extra, fold it over, solder it from there to there. And then solder this cap in place. I'm probably going to put a little 3M double stick tape on the bottom of this capacitor to hold it in place. It needs to sit up just a little bit to be nice and level. And then we have two more open ground points here that we can use to bring grounds from other parts of the amp over here to our main star ground point. One thing real quick too, I was going to talk about is this transformer comes with both 115 and 125 volt taps on the primary. And I've learned with these to use the 125 taps if you can. And you get the right voltage here at the rectifier too, because the transformer will be quieter and also run a little cooler, even if it's only like 120 volts, which is what my house usually is, 120 to 121. If we can't get enough B plus here, we can hook it to the 115 volt and that'll jack up the voltage a little bit. So if we need more voltage, that's an option, but we're going to start off using the 125 tap, and there's a white and a black or a white and a gray. Never connect both these black and gray to anything together. If you do, it'll instantly smoke the transformer. So if we're not going to use this gray one, we're going to heat shrink tubing it out of the way and put it over here in the corner. And then for now, we're going to hook these two up just directly to this power socket so we can go ahead and test our voltage and stuff while we wait for the power switch to come in. And then we can always unsolder one of these and hook it over in series with this power switch and the little twisted pair of wires we're going to run up to the front. And we'll just use some of this same twisted wire we use for the heaters to run up here to the switch. And of course, in the middle of soldering this, it looks like the camera stopped recording for whatever reason. I think sometimes the sensor gets hot and it just shuts off. But basically what I've done is I've used my little alligator clip thing to hold this wire in place where it goes through this tag strip, and I stripped off some extra length, so after it comes through this hole, it bends over and goes over to this next terminal. And when it's finished soldered, it looks like that. So we've connected, this is coming out of the choke, and then this terminal here is where the positive side of the 270 UF filtering cap is going to go. So now we can remove our little alligator clip holder thing that I made. And the last thing that we got to do is solder this filtering cap in place right there. And I'm going to put a little piece of 3M double stick tape on the other side of this cap to hold it down to the chassis and to space it up where it's level. So let me find a piece of that and we'll come back and solder this in place, and then we'll have the power supply finished. And the 3M or Scotch double stick tape I use is this red super heavy duty stuff that's used to hold side moldings on cars, but they have it at hardware stores. I just get like the super heavy duty type because this is not something that we want to come loose. And you just come in and it comes in different widths, but I just cut off a little piece like this, and we know that this cap is going to sit in here like this, so we want it on that side. And this stuff is pressure activated, and then it cures over some time till it like sticks like crazy. And so there is no question that this is going to be like stuck down here to the chassis really good. So we want to put some pressure on it, stick that down, and then get these terminals up where we can see some of the wire coming through, and then that's stuck in place, and we just need to solder these two terminals. And again, we don't want to be skimpy soldering this, but you don't want to like cook the capacitor either. So heat up the terminal first and then move the iron down to the pin on the capacitor and just flow some solder in there. And sometimes I've learned it helps to stand them up like this when you're soldering these little strips. See how on this one, gravity The solder's all collected down at the bottom and the holes open at the top. So standing it up vertically like this, it helps keep the solder where you want it. You make sure you've got a really good solder joint like that. I'm going to just go ahead and make sure this one's got a nice... And then the solder's flowing between here and there, just all over the whole thing. Then we know we've got a really good solder joint. Like that. And that's it for our power supply. Pretty simple. Rectifier tube, first cap, second cap. Oh, and the other thing I want to do here is I'm probably going to do the same thing and put a strip of this 3M tape to hold the strap to the capacitor. So let me go ahead and do that too real quick while we got this rolling. Take this nut off. I have a roll of this tape that's a little thinner that would probably be better for this. And I'm going to go find some scissors. I'll be right back. So I've cut a strip of this tape that's the width of the strap. And I'm going to put it here on the inside of the strap. Like this. And then we're going to peel off the outer protective strip. Sometimes it's a little hard to get it started. Actually, guys, that's not really sticking to that. That's probably not a good idea. So, what I've used in the past was contact cement, and that's probably what we're going to end up using this time as well. So let me get some of my favorite contact cement. And this step isn't absolutely necessary, but I just feel like it's a good step to make sure this is nice and secure. So we use our most hated tool to open up the contact cement cap. And then we put some on the inside of the strap. Like that. If you've never used contact cement, this stuff's great. You put some on both surfaces and then you let it dry for a minute until it gets tacky. And then when you touch the two surfaces together, they're glued. So we're going to let that dry for about 2 minutes, I think it is, and we'll come back, stick that together, and then bolt this cap down. Okay, our little thing of contact cement has tacked up, and we're going to stick that together like that, and then snug down this nut. We don't want to get this like insanely tight where it like splits this plastic strap. And for now, we're just going to snug this down. And we'll come back later from the top side and snug down the Allen bolt. But now our cap is glued to the strap and isn't going to go anywhere. So the one last thing we need to do before we finish up this power supply is we need to put the bleeder resistor on. And where the bleeder resistor goes is we're going to install it right here across these two terminals. And what this does is when you turn the power off, it bleeds the voltage out of these capacitors to ground to make the system more safe. And so let's go ahead and solder these two in. And we're just going to heat this joint up. And slide it in there. And then heat this joint up. Down here in the lower part. Trying to get it to go through this bottom hole down here on that joint. Just like that. And again, like I warned about, I probably should have stood this up because when we soldered this, it opened up the hole above this joint where the capacitor goes in. And so we need to come back and drag some of this solder back over the hole. You can kind of drag the solder just like that. So now we got our bleeder resistor across here. It's down low, it's out of the way, and now the power supply is complete. So that's it for the power supply. Next thing we need to do, we'll probably do it on the next video, is come back and bring this thing up on a variac with a dim bulb and check the voltages without the rectifier tube in, make sure the heaters are working and check the heater voltages, and then we'll pop the rectifier tube in, fire it back up, and see what our B plus is. Now I know our B plus is going to be really high, or not really high, but it's going to be, you know, probably 20 or 30 volts higher than what we're going to end up with being unloaded. But it'll make sure that the rectifier tube's working, that we're getting the DC we want to see before we connect this up to our output tubes, which will be our next step. So I hope you're enjoying the channel. If you are, please subscribe. Please like the video. And we'll see you soon for more 6SQ7 fun. Have a great day.